There was no Rachel. There was only him, and the bartender who kept glancing toward them like he was watching a soap opera unfold in real time. The bar wasn't crowded, but every sound blurred together. Clinking glasses, music that suddenly felt too upbeat, and the echo of my heart punching my ribs. I walked up to the bar, no hesitation, no drama. I slid the ring across the counter like it was something I'd found in the parking lot. Meaningless, cold, metal. When she comes back, I told the bartender, she'll be with the guy in the green shirt. Just hand this to her. He paused. I swear his jaw tensed for a split second. He didn't say, "Are you sure?" He didn't ask if I wanted a drink. He just nodded like he'd been part of this scene before. Like every bar keeps a quiet seat reserved for a fool like me. I didn't wait to see her reaction. That part would come later. I walked out into the parking lot, sat in my car and turned off the engine. No music, no phone, just the hum of the street lamp above me and the realization that I had finally stopped making excuses for her. Funny thing is, I didn't feel angry. Not yet. I felt empty, like someone had pressed delete on everything I thought was real. What came after this moment? That's the part no one prepares you for. I didn't plan to stay, I really didn't, but my hands wouldn't move. I sat in that car like a statue, fingers wrapped around the steering wheel, headlights off, windows slightly cracked. The night air drifted in, cool and indifferent, the kind of breeze that usually makes you feel alive. But I felt nothing. Then the door opened. The bar's soft yellow light spilled onto the sidewalk like stage lighting. And there she was, Abigail, walking out with him. She had her arm looped through his. Now, I'd never seen her do that with me, not even back in our so-called honeymoon phase. She always said she didn't like clingy gestures in public, but there she was, melting into him like she belonged. The bartender followed close behind. He didn't chase. He didn't call out. He simply walked up to her as she was laughing about something, tapped her on the shoulder, and handed her the small silver band I'd left behind. I couldn't hear what he said, but I didn't need to. She looked down at the ring like it was radioactive. Her smile shattered, just vanished. The color drained from her face in slow motion. She looked around as if expecting me to step out of the shadows, but I didn't. I wanted to see her face without having to see mine reflected in her eyes. She whispered something to the man beside her. He looked confused, then annoyed, then smug. Abigail turned back toward the bar, stared into the doorway like it might answer something, then slowly closed her fingers around the ring. Not on it, not wearing it, just holding it, like it was a mistake someone had handed her. She didn't cry. She didn't chase. She just stood there, frozen. And that told me everything I needed to know. She didn't expect to be caught, because deep down, she never believed I'd ever do anything but forgive her. I'd always been the quiet one, the one who didn't fight, the one who said things like, "It's okay," and "We'll work through it." She thought she still had time to twist this around, but I'd given her the ring, and now she could return it to whoever she wanted. The man beside her tried to laugh it off, tried to touch her shoulder, but she brushed him off. He said something. I could read his lips even from the car. "I thought you said you were separated." Her reaction: silence. I took that silence as my closure. I didn't start the car immediately. I sat there for another hour, maybe more, watching people go in and out, wondering how many of them were living a lie too, wearing rings they didn't deserve, or holding hands with someone while someone else sat in a car nearby, unraveling. When I finally drove off, I didn't go home. I couldn't. Home didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a crime scene I was still cleaning up after. So I drove aimlessly through the streets of a city that suddenly felt too loud, too alive, too unforgiving, and I wondered how long it would take before she stopped holding on to that ring and started rewriting the story of how it ended. When I finally got back to the house, everything felt staged. The frame photo on the entryway table, us at a lake in Vermont grinning like idiots, suddenly looked like it belonged to strangers. The half-folded laundry on the couch, the throw blanket she always left crumpled at the foot of the bed, her slippers by the back door. It all screamed routine, a carefully crafted illusion of normal. But I knew better now. I walked from room to room like a guest in my own life, brushing my fingertips against walls we painted together, shelves we built, promises we whispered into dim light. And none of it meant anything anymore. Her phone was still on the charger in the kitchen, and for the first time in my life, I opened it. I didn't snoop before. I always thought privacy meant trust, and I refused to become some insecure stereotype. But after what I saw, I needed truth more than pride. It was worse than I imagined. She hadn't just met him recently. There were photos, selfies with inside jokes in the captions, screenshots of reservations. Her in a mirror wearing that green dress I bought her last Christmas. The one she told me felt too tight to wear for our anniversary dinner. Posing with the caption, "Guess who gets to see this tonight?" Sent to him, not me. There were voice notes too. I shouldn't have listened, but I did. Her voice sounded different, lighter, like she was practicing a younger version of herself. She giggled like a teenager, told him he made her feel wanted, and worst of all, safe. That one hit hardest, because if there was one thing I always tried to give her, it was safety. Not just financial, emotional. I was the one who stood by her when she couldn't find work, who cleaned up when her mother passed, who held her when she collapsed in the shower from grief. And now she was giving credit for that safety to some man who didn't even know her middle name. But I didn't rage. I didn't smash a plate or punch a wall. Instead, I packed. Not my stuff, hers. I moved like a ghost, clearing drawers, folding clothes, placing them gently into boxes. No dramatic tearing or trash bags, just deliberate motions. I didn't want her to come home to chaos. I wanted her to come home to a mirror, one that showed her exactly what she'd built and what she'd destroyed. I left her a note. Nothing poetic, nothing angry. It simply said, "He can have you, but not this house. Not me. Not anymore." I placed the note where her slippers usually sat. Then I took one more thing, not out of revenge, but closure. I grabbed the wedding album from our shelf, not to burn it, not to shred it. I just didn't want her rewriting the ending years from now and pretending I disappeared in anger. I didn't. I left in clarity, in silence, in self-respect. That night, I booked a cheap Airbnb in a nearby town. One room, no TV, no view, just peace. For the first time in years, I slept through the night without waiting for the sound of her key in the door. And the next morning, I turned my phone back on. There were 27 missed calls, 14 texts, one voicemail that started with, "What the hell, Daryl?" and ended with silence. She didn't apologize. She didn't ask where I was. She just said, "We need to talk." But the thing is, we really didn't. I didn't reply to any of her messages. Not because I was playing games. Not because I wanted to punish her with silence. But because for once in my life, I needed to watch her try. I needed to see if she'd fight for the thing she spent so much energy quietly dismantling. And sure enough, by mid-afternoon the next day, I heard a knock on the Airbnb door. I didn't answer right away. I sat on the edge of the bed, heart pounding, while her knocking grew more insistent. She hadn't called ahead. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just showed up like always, assuming she could walk back in and explain everything away. When I finally opened the door, she was standing there with sunglasses on despite the overcast sky, arms crossed like she was preparing for battle. But the moment her eyes met mine, her confidence cracked. Darl, she started, voice tight. What is going on? You scared me half to death. I stepped aside, letting her in without a word. She walked in like she owned the room, like she still thought this was about a misunderstanding we could talk through over tea. I don't know what you think you saw, she said, but you were with him. I cut in quietly at the bar, laughing, touching. I saw it. Then you got handed a ring, remember? She froze mid-step. It was the first time in years I'd ever interrupted her. I could see the flicker of panic flash in her eyes, followed by that familiar narrowing of her brows, the same expression she used when cornered in a lie too thin to hold. It's not what you think, she said, pulling off her sunglasses. He's just someone I've known for a while. We were talking. That's it. I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I just stared. She kept talking faster now. Things have been tense between us, Daryl. You've been distant, cold. I've been lonely. I didn't know how to talk to you anymore, and I swear nothing serious has happened. I finally spoke again. Do you want me to quote the message you sent him the night of my birthday? Or should I play the voice memo where you called our marriage a lifeless arrangement you were trying to escape? Her lips parted, but no words came out. That was the moment she realized I'd been through her phone, that I'd seen it all. Not just the pictures and the notes, but the rehearsed versions of herself she'd been sending him while coming home to me with a different face. You read my phone, she said, as if that was the betrayal, as if my invasion of privacy somehow outweighed hers. I did, I said. I also folded your sweaters, boxed up your jewelry, and left everything you care about in the guest room. You can come pick it up when you're ready. I made a mistake, she whispered. A stupid mistake. No, I replied. Mistakes happen once. You made a decision. Over and over, she looked at me like I was someone new, someone she didn't know how to handle. And the truth is, I didn't know this version of me either. I wasn't yelling or begging or crying. I was done. Where are you staying? She asked finally. Here, for now. Not that it matters. She took a deep breath, glanced around the room like she might find a piece of me to hang on to. But there was nothing left. You're just going to walk away from everything, she said. No, I replied. You already did. I'm just catching up. The moment she left that room, something in me went quiet. Not broken, not shattered, just still. Like a radio that finally stopped playing static. She hadn't cried. She hadn't begged. Not even a real apology. Just a performance of remorse with no soul behind it. And the worst part, she still believed that given enough time I'd crawl back to her, that I'd missed the smell of her shampoo, the sound of her footsteps, the fake warmth of our cold bed. She thought she still had power over my story. She didn't. That night I pulled out a notebook, one I used to write little to-do lists in, and began writing a new list. But this time it wasn't filled with groceries or weekend errands. It was titled, Erase the Blueprint. Because everything in my life had been built around her. My routines, my location, my friends, even my haircut. She always hated when I let it grow out. Said it made me look soft. So guess what? I let it grow. That was the first thing on the list. The second, closing joint accounts. I spent hours on the phone the next morning. Credit cards, utilities, even the streaming platforms. I changed passwords. I removed her name. I made her new email address. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't pettiness. It was survival. I needed to strip away the pieces of her that were still tethered to my everyday life. Every shared password was a ghost. By noon, I'd emailed my boss and requested a 1-month remote work option. Told him I needed time away from the city from personal matters. He agreed without pressing. I think I looked wrecked enough to earn the space. I packed a duffel bag, closed the Airbnb behind me, and drove until the buildings turned to trees and the air felt clean again. I found a small lakeside rental 2 towns over, the kind with mismatched furniture and an old fireplace that didn't work. But it had quiet, and that's all I needed. For the next few days, I didn't speak to anyone. I turned off my phone. I didn't check emails. I didn't scroll. I didn't look for signs of her trying to reach me again. I didn't want her messages. I didn't want the recycled apologies. I wanted her to feel what I had felt for months. Absence. Emotional silence. That hollow space where connection used to live. But on the 4th day, I made one exception. I logged into a shared cloud account we hadn't yet closed, and I uploaded a single photo. It was the picture of her ring resting in the bartender's palm, caught from the security footage I'd requested from the bar. I'd asked for it the day after everything went down, told them I needed closure, that I wanted to see the exact moment it all ended. Surprisingly, the bartender sent it to me with no hesitation. Maybe he understood more than I thought. The ring looked so small in that frame, almost like a trinket. Nothing about it hinted at the years we shared, the nights I spent planning surprise dinners or rubbing her back after long shifts. It was just a loop of metal that used to mean forever, now frozen in the hand of a stranger. I titled the photo, "Returned," and then I logged out permanently. No message, no caption, no explanation, just a picture, her final souvenir. I hadn't heard from Abigail in almost a week. The silence should have felt like relief, but instead, it gnawed at me in quiet, familiar waves, like waiting for a storm you know is coming but can't predict from where. Every vibration of my phone felt like a gut punch. Even though I'd trained myself not to look, I was trying to live in the quiet, to breathe without her shadow behind every decision. But then her sister Mallory called. At first I ignored it twice, but on the 3rd try, I picked up. She sounded frantic. Her voice cracked and high-rung like she'd just run through traffic. "Daryl, please don't hang up." "I'm listening," I said, careful not to offer more than that. "I didn't know," she said. "I swear I didn't know it went that far." I didn't respond. I just waited. "She told me you were taking a break, that you needed space, that the ring thing at the bar was just a symbolic gesture, like closure." I didn't realize she was trying to frame you as the one who gave up. There it was. Abigail hadn't just twisted the story to protect herself. She was rewriting the entire ending. In her version, I was the emotionally distant husband who'd walked away without a word. She made herself the victim of a quiet abandonment. And now Mallory, someone I'd always trusted, was calling to confess that pieces weren't adding up. "She said you'd stop trying," Mallory added. "But then I remembered last Christmas, the album you made her, the one with all the Polaroids from your trip. She never mentioned it. When I brought it up, she pretended it didn't exist." I leaned back in the creaky chair of my lakeside rental and let the weight of that settle in. I had spent 3 nights putting that album together. Handwritten captions, inside jokes only the 2 of us would get. It had been my attempt to remind her of what we were. She'd opened it on Christmas Eve with a faint smile and said, "Oh, cute," before moving on to check a message on her phone. I told myself she was just distracted. Now I saw it for what it was. Detachment. Mallory continued, "I think she's scared you're telling people. Scared someone will find out who the guy was." "I haven't told anyone," I said. "Not even you." "She's projecting," Mallory said quietly. "She's unraveling." For a moment I felt nothing. No joy in her unraveling. No power in the truth finally creeping out. Just a dull ache that even now, even after I left everything behind, Abigail was still scripting her own version of who I was. "You don't have to explain anything to me," Mallory said. But I want you to know that I believe you. And I'm sorry I hung up after thanking her. But the call lingered in my chest for hours. Not because it changed anything, but because it proved something I'd been afraid to admit. She wasn't just a liar. She was a storyteller, a skilled one. And I'd been a character in her fiction for longer than I wanted to believe. I stood up, walked over to the small bathroom mirror, and stared at myself. Not in some dramatic, soul-searching way, just to see what I looked like now without her, without the weight of constantly proving I was worth keeping. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a supporting role in someone else's drama. I looked like the author. It happened just after sunset. I was sitting outside the cabin watching the lake swallow the sun when I heard tires crunching over gravel. I didn't move. I already knew it was her. It wasn't instinct. It was inevitability. She was the kind of person who needed the last word, the final edit, the ability to say, "See." I tried. The door slammed, footsteps, then silence. I didn't turn around until I heard her voice behind me, soft but rehearsed. "I thought I'd find you here." I turned my head slowly. She was standing with her arms crossed, the wind tugging at the sleeves of her denim jacket, the same one I bought her 2 birthdays ago, the one she said made her feel like a painting. I didn't say a word. "Daryl," she started, "I know you think there's nothing left to say, but there is. I need you to hear me out." "You mean like I heard you out at the bar, or through your voice notes?" I asked, keeping my tone even. Because I've done a lot of listening lately. She flinched, but pressed on. "I was confused. I didn't mean to hurt you. I felt stuck, trapped in routines. It was like we were just going through the motions." "You mean like marriage?" I replied. "Because that's what that is sometimes. Choosing to show up even when it's not shiny and new." She stepped closer, eyes glossy now. "I didn't fall out of love with you, Daryl. I just forgot how to feel it." I laughed, not loudly, not crewy, just hollow and tired. "Do you know what I did the day after I left? I boxed up your things, all of them. Every bracelet, every scarf, every photo. I didn't even break anything. I treated your stuff better than you treated me." "I made a mistake," she whispered again. I stood up then, slowly, letting the silence stretch. The space between us felt like an entire ocean. "No," I said. "A mistake is leaving the stove on. You built a second life and kept it warm while pretending our bed was still yours." Her eyes finally welled over. "Please, can't we at least talk about what we had?" "What we had?" I repeated, stepping forward. "We had 12 years. We had trust. We had quiet Tuesday nights with bad movies. We had inside jokes and playlists and anniversaries that actually mattered. We had everything, until you decided none of it was exciting enough to fight for." "I miss you," she said, breaking, her voice cracking mid-sentence. "I miss us." I looked past her toward the water, then back at the woman I once would have torn the world apart for. "I miss who I thought you were," I replied. She didn't answer. She didn't argue. She just stood there crying in the fading light, realizing she was no longer the center of the story. And maybe for the first time she saw it, really saw it, that I was gone. And no speech, no plea, no rewritten version of the past could bring me back. After a long pause, I stepped aside and opened the cabin door. "Your things are inside," I said. "You can take them, but after tonight, I don't want to see you again." She stared at me like she didn't recognize the man standing in front of her. And she was right. She didn't. She didn't take everything. I watched from inside the cabin as she loaded 2 boxes into the back seat of her car. The rest, The frame photos, the little souvenirs from our vacations. Even the mug she once swore she'd drink from until it cracked, she left behind. Maybe it was her version of an apology. Maybe she realized that things meant nothing without the meaning we once gave them. She didn't knock again. She didn't ask for a hug or a final word. She drove away slowly, headlights flickering between the trees. And with every second that passed, I felt something in my chest loosen. A knot I hadn't known I'd been carrying for years. The next morning, I got up before sunrise. I walked barefoot down to the lake, sat on the dock with a cup of bitter instant coffee, and breathed in air that didn't taste like regret. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't wondering where she was, what she was thinking, or if I'd done enough. I wasn't rehearsing comebacks or rewriting memories. I was just here. Later that week, I signed the divorce papers. No drama, no courtroom theatrics, just a clean line drawn across a page, like the end of a sentence that had gone on too long. She didn't contest anything. Maybe she knew there was nothing left to fight for. Or maybe, in her own way, she had let go too. And me? I didn't disappear. I didn't become bitter or hardened. I stayed in that small lakeside cabin for a few more months. I picked up old hobbies, photography, sketching, even started journaling again, not to track my pain, but to remember the quiet victories, like making dinner for one and feeling satisfied, or laughing at a dumb joke without needing someone else to hear it. Eventually, I moved to a new town, got a modest apartment above a used bookstore, started fresh. People there didn't know my history. They just knew me as the guy who always ordered chamomile tea and left generous tips. I liked that version of me. Not because he was better, but because he was real. And one afternoon, while browsing a thrift shop, I found a ring almost identical to the one I left on that bar counter. I held it in my palm for a moment, then smiled and set it back on the shelf. I didn't need to hold on to the past, not anymore. I wasn't someone's husband. I wasn't someone's mistake. I was me, and that was finally enough. Have you ever walked away from something or someone and found peace on the other side? Tell us about a powerful moment in history, or from your life, when someone chose healing over chaos.